Hey, Rick, what did you eat last night?
Some friends and I went to this Italian restaurant in New York called Felidia. Have you heard of it?
I have heard of it. I have not been.
So it's one of the restaurants by Felidia Bastianich. And
Lydia.
You and I had been to Becco, which we loved, and this is sort of her high-end restaurant. And overall, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I had this bianconeri, black and white cittata. So it was black and white cittata pasta, and it came with calamari, shrimp, and then it had a pesto trapanese, which was basically plum tomatoes, almonds, garlic, basil, and olive oil. So that was sort of the sauce that all of this stuff came on. And it was really good because I don't think I've ever had that I know of almonds thrown into like a tomato sauce to make the sauce. And it was just really beautiful. It gave it a really nutty flavor that I loved. And the restaurant was super nice. It was small and a lot more crowded than I thought. You couldn't hear anyone talk, but overall it was good. Yeah, I liked it.
You mean you couldn't hear the people at your table?
Yeah, I couldn't hear the people at the table.
God, the loud restaurant thing kills me.
Yeah. How about you? What did you eat?
I made a family favorite known as cheese and potato pie.
Cheese and potato pie?
Yes.
That sounds nice.
Oh my
What
God.
could go wrong?
It's every bit as good as it sounds. It came from a magazine or a newspaper, the recipe, before I was born, apparently, in England. So my mom had cut it out before I was even around. So that's how long we've been eating that in my family. And we don't eat it often because it's cheese and potatoes. And then you make like a little custard.
Nothing to see here, people.
Yeah, with milk and butter and a little Worcester sauce and mayonnaise. And then their bacon is optional. So, of course, I put a little cooked crumbled bacon in there, and you layer it up in a Pyrex pan and pour over the custard and bake it, and you eat it with ketchup. And
wow, it sounds like nothing could be wrong with that at all.
It is so good. It is so good. Yeah.
Nice. Hello, and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Rick.
And I'm Kate.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others.
So just as a reminder, you know the job. Rate and review us. When you're done with this podcast, give us some love. Tell everyone out there what you think of us. It really helps other people find us.
Yes, thank you very much. So today's episode was born out of, well, this entire podcast actually was born out of phone conversations that Rick and I have had over the years. And we were always like, we should be recording this. And we started doing that several years ago. And so just a couple days ago, we were talking about things that we were cooking and new things we were discovering about food and things. And we were like, why is this not an episode? So it is now. Welcome. That's where we came from today.
The amount of times we've been on the phone having these conversations, and always halfway through we're like, why are we not recording this?
Exactly. So we decided to cease the conversation and then complete it on here.
And save it for you people.
Exactly. So we're going to just talk about some things that we're cooking these days. And we would love to hear back from you about things that you're cooking and things that you love. And any tips and tricks and ideas you have. So
and I think what's great is this
us.
whole conversation really came out of love, because we were really talking about things that were making us excited to cook, and the difference it makes when you really cook things for yourself that you love cooking, because obviously that helps with this whole idea of love, kindness, compassion towards yourself and others. So this whole idea of making sure you're cooking what you like, what really thrills you, it's a really great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, cooking becomes more and more of a creative endeavor. And I love branching out and trying new things. And in general, I like to try new things in life. And so I've been making things that I've never made before. And so have you. And so it's been cool.
And the fun that I get when all these years since we've been doing this podcast, I've become a better cook. So it's fun that not only am I now I'm not cooking from recipes anymore. Certain things I've made so much of that I can actually make them on my own. I can alter them, and they come out wonderfully.
Yes.
There was a time when I'd try to make up a recipe or do it on my own. I'm like, this is terrible.
Which I'm pretty sure every excellent cook had to go through that phase.
Yes, exactly. So I'm sort of like really loving my skill level right now around some things.
Yes. I know. I was just talking to my mom about that when she was here this weekend, about how much more adventurous and knowledgeable and creative you've gotten about cooking. thing. Yeah, it was
fun. Mm-hmm. Hi, Patricia.
Yay, hi, Mama. She won't listen. She can never remember how to find the podcast on her phone.
Wait a minute, but don't you like show her every time you're with her or download it every time? If any of you have an older parent who is not used to technology and if they need help working with their technology, Kate is now offering in-house services to provide them so that you don't have to.
Oh my God. Yeah.
She is quite skilled at providing tech service to people of another generation.
You should have seen me trying to help her send a text to somebody new just this past trip.
Oh, I was going to be like, send a text. I know she's done that before, but you're right. Somebody new.
That was the kicker. Exactly. If it wasn't already in her feed, that was it. No. Yeah.
Oh God. We'll know she'll listen. We'll know if she ever listened because one day she'll be like, Katie, I heard you talking.
That's right. Why?
About your technology services.
Why are you giving me crap on your podcast? All right. God. So what are you cooking these days that you're in love with, Mr. Fiore?
Well, Kate, I have come back to something I loved a long time ago, and I know something you loved, which is smoothies.
Oh.
I've come back to smoothies for like the past month. Remember when we started this podcast, smoothies was one of our first subjects, if not perhaps the first.
Yes.
Or second.
Yeah, it was the first or second one.
We were loving them, and we were doing them, and it was really great. And when we did that interview with Cappy from Beyond the Plate a couple of weeks ago, the smoothie thing came up, and all of us were like, why are we not making more smoothies?
Yeah.
So it really made me start thinking. So I've been doing a lot of smoothies, and my basic smoothie always has a couple things which I love, which makes it super easy. It always has either almond milk or yogurt, and yogurt and water is a little mixture, one of those. I'm always doing kale or spinach, and then definitely turmeric and ginger.
And you use fresh turmeric, right?
I do use fresh turmeric. I generally have it for the most part, and I have a little jar of, ground turmeric if for any reason I don't have fresh turmeric. And then generally, I'm also just generally putting in what I have in my fridge, and those are always usually like broccoli, the celery, the cucumber, a little carrot, a little banana, and then I was thinking about you because when I was making my smoothie this morning, I was thinking I've come a long way with ginger. Do you remember years ago, you used to send me pictures of how much ginger you were putting in your smoothie? And I'd get these pictures from you that were literally a palm full of ginger. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's a lot of ginger.
Yes.
I was like, how does she do it? And so a lot of times when I'm making my smoothies, I'm always carving my ginger or peeling my ginger. And I'm like, I can do it. I can take it. If Kate can take it, I can take it. Now, I do not put in an entire palm full, but I do way more than I used to. And I just think this is like a really important note, this whole idea of how long it takes for your system to get used to something you haven't been used to, particularly when it's good for you. So it speaks to this whole idea of like, stick with it, right? We've got to keep trying new things, and you got to keep working with, and eventually your system will build up a desire for it.
Yeah, well, I only ever put that much in because I like it. I never did it to try to be healthy. It's because I really like ginger. And I would put so many weird vegetables in there that it needed some flavor.
Yeah, totally. And if I get a little crazy, I'm going to put in the chia seeds. I'll do a little chia seeds. Sometimes I like to do definitely spinach and yogurt or spinach and almond milk. And then I'll do some chia seeds. And then I just simply like to do a couple of vegetables and then maybe definitely turmeric, some coriander, some nutmeg, a little of those sort of like heavy, winter warm spices, which is really, really nice. Interesting.
And those you use powdered?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
And I forget how good it makes my digestive system work. It's so cleansing. And I'm like, again, this morning, like, my God, thank God I'm doing these again.
The first ones I used to make were mostly vegetables with a little bit of blueberry in there and lemon, ginger, and cilantro. Cilantro is my secret ingredient in a smoothie for flavor for myself. And then I went through another phase where I just did kale and blueberry, and I was using a vegan protein powder at the same as well with that one. And now, it's been a long time. I've really gone off them. I'm not sure. And I don't even feel, right now, I don't even want one. Like when you talk about it, I'm like, I'd rather have a piece of whole wheat toast and an egg for breakfast. I really would. If I did them again, maybe I would get back into wanting them. But I also am conscious of not really wanting to use a lot of fruit.
Right.
I don't need the extra sugar. And, the idea of grinding up a bunch of fruit, it's certainly not particularly healthy for a lot of folks. And so,
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I do put blueberries in. I keep some in my my freezer, and I love to put blueberries in when I use kale.
Yes.
Because kale can just be a little much for me, but the blueberry helps to cut the hit of the kale for me.
Yeah. Kale and blueberry together is even just those things is okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah. So
How about you? Oh, sorry.
Well, you mentioned almond milk. So let's talk about almond milk because both of us have started making almond milk.
This is so amazing how we're in sync sometimes.
I know. I didn't even know you were making it. And I was like, I'm going to make almond milk.
If we lived in the same house, do you think our cycles would sync up?
Absolutely. They already have. So I made mine from a recipe in the Cook's Country or America's Test Kitchen, I'm not sure, Instant Pot cookbook. So I made mine in the Instant Pot, which, well, I didn't make it in there, but instead of soaking the almonds, I pressure cooked them for, I think it was like a minute or a couple of minutes. It wasn't long. And I used blanched slivered almonds because the recipe called for blanched almonds, and the only ones I could find were at Trader Joe's, and they were slivered. And so I used them, and then I rinsed them off and then pureed them in my Vitamix with water and then strained it through the nut milk bag that my friend Krista got me, which was harder to use than you would think.
Okay, could you please explain what a nut milk bag is, please?
Well, you know what it isn't? It's not just a cheesecloth pouch, which is what I thought it was.
Well, that would have been my first thought.
And
that seems normal and easy.
Thought it would function like cheesecloth where you can wring things out of it quite effortlessly. But it's multi-layered, I think. It's still cotton, I think. You know, it's effectively cheesecloth, but it's got a much tighter weave, and it's
oh,
denser.
wow. So hard to push stuff through it.
Yeah,
right?
You really have, there's a technique. I had to watch a video online because I was wringing it out and it just wasn't working. And of course, you know, it didn't work as well as it did in the video, but you have to sort of massage it in a particular way. There is an actual touch, I believe, to how you get the milk out. So it's not just wringing it out through cheesecloth. So that was actually the most cumbersome part. Then I put in a little cinnamon and vanilla and a dash of salt, and it was so good. I had it on oatmeal. I had it in cocktails. I had it in coffee. It's delicious.
I was with you when you tried it in the cocktail. That was fun.
Yes, totally.
Because one of the conversations we had around almond milk is how long do we keep it around for? And a lot of recipes I found have been as low as 3 days, as many as 6 or 7. So I was on the watch, like I was keeping an eye on it because the first time I made it, I just made so much more than I thought I would actually use in an entire week. So I think for both of us, there's this moment where like, how are we going to use up all of the almond milk before it goes bad?
Yeah, exactly. And mine did last a whole week and didn't start to go bad. And I know that Krista's sometimes does. So you're going to do an experiment for me on this.
Yes, Kate has given me 2 directives over the last week, one of which is on almond milk.
That's right. So your experiment is you have to make it 2 different ways. One of which is make it using, because he uses nuts that are not peeled, right? Like you use ones
Correct.
that have the skin on. And so Krista's theory was that the stuff that the, germs and whatnot in the skins might be what's making it go bad quicker, which is an excellent theory. Or maybe pressure cooking it killed the germs, which is also an excellent theory. So Rick is in a position to try both of these things. So he's going to use his regular skinned almonds, but he's going to try pressure cooking them and see if that makes it last longer. And then he's going to make it with peeled almonds and not pressure cook it. And we're going to have science.
A lot going on here. So why would we want to make our own almond milk? What do you think the advantages are?
Because it's not cheaper at all. In fact, It's way more expensive than the stuff that you buy, at least the way I've been buying the almonds. Well, it's just so good. I mean, I've never tasted almond milk from a box and been like, ooh, yum.
Ooh, that tastes like almonds.
Right. No, it's adequate. It's fine. I've always bought it, but meh. But this is rich and flavorful. It's got that wonderful mouthfeel, and it was just really, really tasty. And, of course, the provenance of everything that's in it, and there's no chemicals and all that.
Yeah. The other great thing I was thinking about is the first batch I made, I don't know if I told you this, I did not strain it. So I just mixed them all up, put the whole thing in my fridge and was using that. So I'd have to shake it up every time I used it. And I was using it in smoothies. And I tasted it just directly through the mouth. And it obviously wasn't a great taste to the tongue because it was obviously chunky and a little
grainy,
sort of pasty. But for smoothies, to mix it in for a smoothie, I didn't really notice any difference. That was fine.
Yeah.
And then the next one I made, when I strained it, I was like, oh, now I can drink it straight. Because we had originally, I think we got into a conversation at one point, don't ever want to drink almond milk directly? And I don't know if either of us ever really do, like want to just pull out the almond milk container and chug from it, right?
No, yeah.
But that was sort of interesting, is that I thought, oh, when you do strain it, it really becomes more drinkable. Because I do what you do, and the most I've done is I puree the almonds, and then I basically at this point I've only added a little vanilla flavoring, and it's really, really great.
Yeah. Yeah. So almond, and then I was thinking about making oat milk, which is even easier because
Really?
you don't even there's dissent on the internet as to whether one needs to soak the oats in advance of that, and I think it's even more ephemeral in its nature. I think it lasts even less long. But oat milk lattes are such a thing. I was like, I'd like to try some oat milk in my coffee.
Oh, here's the other thing about making your own milk that I think is important. Is when I've bought a container or a box of almond milk, I never use the whole thing. It always goes bad before I get through it. So I made a batch of almond milk last week, and I made like a third of what I made last time, and I was able to use it up over the course of 3 or 4 days with my almond milk, and that with my smoothies, and that was just perfect. No pressure, didn't go bad, and it's so easy to make. I don't mind making it every week or every other week.
Yeah. I haven't made it since the first time. Because I just I don't know, I needed a break from it because I have to use it every day, and I don't know that I want it every day. So I think it's one of those things that maybe once a month I'll make, and I'll have it for that week.
So this time I made it, and I was able to alternate with my smoothies. One day I used yogurt, the other day I used almond milk, and that got me through an entire week. So that made me super happy.
Nice.
Can I tell you the other thing I've been making a lot of this winter? Mushroom soup.
Yes, you have.
I just can't tell you how much I love making mushroom soup, and I feel like I've become such an expert at it. I've made it with 3 different types of mushrooms, and so I always make it starting with a little ghee in a pan, and then onions, and then I've made it with onion where I just let that saute for a minute. Then I put a little broth in and the mushrooms, and it's super easy. And then you add thyme and oregano, let them cook up, and then you puree it. And
do you use fresh or dried herbs?
It really depends what I have. All these times I've been making, I've pretty much had fresh herbs the entire time because it was such a chore. I want to go out and have fresh mushroom soup.
Yes.
So bottom line, mushroom soup is really, really great. It's really tasty. And depending upon the type of mushroom you use, like I use the basic white mushrooms, which are fine. And then I've also used the porcini. And then I've used the shiitake. And shiitake are really my favorite because they have the sort of the richest, heaviest, meatiest flavor. And so whatever mushroom you want to use. But here's some things that I think I've been doing different that are really, really interesting. So I've made it just putting the onions and the butter and in the ghee and letting them cook a little bit. And then the second time I made it, I put butter in and a little bit of olive oil, and then I let the onions caramelize. So I let them go for such a long time that it adds, as you know, such a depth of flavor to the soup. I can't take it.
I want to know why every recipe that tells you to caramelize onions, and it says you want them to get to this deep mahogany color, really dark, say this will take 10 to 15 minutes. They are lying through their teeth. It takes like 45 minutes.
Easily. Caramelized onions, you're in for at least an hour from the chopping to getting them done. Yes, 100. It's very odd.
And so worth it.
Yeah. And then after with the caramelized onions, and then sometimes they'll ask you to add some wine, like just as a little bit of flavoring to help burn it off. But then I found this recipe by Jeffrey Zakarian, actually, and he was using vermouth.
I was about to say, I bet vermouth would be good in that. That's so funny.
A dark vermouth. And I put that in. And it also just happens to coincide with me upgrading my vermouth at home. Because as you know, I've been using, it's a standard cheap vermouth that I think is always sold and is in a lot of bars. And so I was at a bar a couple months ago, and I was just talking about Manhattans. And he told me how much a vermouth can change a Manhattan. So he actually let me sample about 4 or 5 vermouths.
Oh my gosh.
And I came in with 2 that I really liked. I bought one. And it totally changed the Manhattans I make at home. But to put it in the soup, it's so wonderful because this higher end vermouth, it has a denser texture. It has a more flavorful texture. It almost, I wouldn't say it's syrupy, but when it comes out of the bottle, it's just a little bit heavier, which I like.
And then sherry is very common, I think, in a mushroom soup. So I would imagine that it would be in the neighborhood of sherry, just sweeter. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like those two things, between the caramelized onions and the vermouth, has just changed a mushroom soup, and it can be extrapolated to many other soups, particularly if you want to avoid cream, because I think a little vermouth or a little sherry that's going to evaporate a little bit is going to be way better than the amount of cream one has to put in.
So do you put any cream?
No, I haven't.
No, so you just have the ghee basically for the richness.
Yes, exactly. And I just cannot tell you the texture. I love the soup in my mouth. So I just recommend people trying a good mushroom soup. Definitely shiitake or porcini mushrooms. I did a combination once also. I haven't done portobello mushrooms. I'm going to do that. This is a fun fact. Did you know that when I was doing all this mushroom work, I was like, porcini mushrooms. I'm like, that's a beautiful name. And then they have portobello. I'm like, that's a great name. Shiitake. And then there's other ones like chanterelles. And I'm like, why do we call the basic ones buttons? And so I looked it up. It's actually their actual name, which probably no one wants to say, is agaricus. Give me those agaricus mushrooms.
Well, good to know.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, so they do have a name, but buttons, yes. Yeah. Because they're cute.
Cute.
I made scones the other day.
Scones?
Yeah. My mom was in town for her birthday, and my friends had a tea party for her because mom's English, and so they did tea as the theme. And so I was in charge of the scones, and oh my gosh, they were amazing and so easy and light as a feather. They looked like heavy and thunky and sort of like doorstops, but they were flaky and light, and we got really good clotted cream and really good strawberry jam to go on them because that's traditional. But it was a few things in the food processor, and I can't tell you how easy they are. So if you're...
Really?
Yeah, I don't love to bake. I'm not really a baker, and one of the reasons I don't like it is it's messy and there's flour everywhere, and I just don't like dealing with that. So there was still flour everywhere. But really, couldn't be easier. Anybody could do it. Who knew?
That is fascinating, because I'm not big on scones when I see them in restaurants, because they're always a little too dry for me or a little too this. They're never like, I know what a perfect scone should be, and I feel like I very rarely get it.
These are cream scones. They have cream in them. They're very moist, flaky, nice and crispy on the outside. Nothing like a scone from a coffee shop like that you would buy, which is really, really heavy and dense. Yeah. These are light and fluffy and moist.
Do you put things on your scones, or do you eat your scones plain?
Well, in this case, I made them completely plain because we bought really expensive jam and clotted cream to go on them, and that was the star. So the point of the scone was to really just be a background for the toppings. Right. If I were to make them again, the recipe, you could put currants in, and I almost put currants in. But I wanted, like I said, I wanted the other stuff to shine more. But you can do all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I've only made them the once, but I would put currants in. I would consider doing like lemon zest. Can't go wrong with lemon. I don't like cranberries particularly, but cranberry orange is a popular combo.
Nice. Oh, that sounds so tasty and so brunchy.
Yeah,
so
really.
tea.
Yeah, next time I have a brunch, because they're so easy and they look pretty impressive, and they're not difficult. The only thing I would need to buy is cream. Everything else I already have on hand. It's only got like 5 things in it.
Nice, because I would not have thought they were that easy.
I know. Me neither. That's why I bring it up. Exactly. Another thing I made recently that was easy, that surprised me, was pecan pralines.
Really?
Yes.
Do tell.
Yes, I went to a friend's place for a little gathering that was Mardi Gras themed, and so I thought, ooh, pecan pralines. So I made them, and I don't make a lot of candy, not surprisingly, because who does anymore? But they were also fairly easy to make and super delicious. They tasted exactly right.
Nice.
Yeah.
God, those would be a deadly thing for me to have around the house or know how to make easily.
Yeah. It turns out that because there's cream in them, or I think I used half and half because that was what I had, but there's dairy in them. Turns out they don't keep indefinitely in the pantry.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Cream goes bad. Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Mm-hmm. Word to the wise.
I cooked a lot with quinoa and faro. But something I've been doing a lot differently with my quinoa and faro, whatever I'm doing, is I've upped the broth that I cook it in. So you had given me this new broth. You had turned me onto this new broth. It's from Orrington Farms, and it's a chicken-based broth, and it's really one of the best chicken-based broths I think vegetarian broth that I think I've had. And so I like to cook my quinoa or my faro in that because it has a really light flavor. Then there's
and
this
it's
other
one of those concentrates, right? You put a dollop in the water.
Yes.
You have to make it.
And,
instead of a box or a can, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, and Orrington Farms is actually a powder. And then the other one we've used before, which is better than bouillon, that's a sauce. So
the Orrington Farms is a powder.
Yes.
Ah, okay, cool.
And you need a little bit less of it than you do for the liquid from Better Than Bouillon.
Okay.
And Better Than Bouillon you can get anywhere now in the stores. I mean, Kate turned me onto this, years ago, and this is before you saw it in commercials with people saying, just add a little dollop into anything.
Yeah.
And so I now cook my quinoa in it, and I now cook my faro in it. And the thing about Better Than Bouillon, they have 3 different ones. They have a vegetable-based broth, then they have a vegetarian chicken broth, and they have a vegetarian beef broth. And so I've really done it in all 3, and I really love cooking in the beef broth if I want a heavier flavor, because it really carries into the quinoa and the faro. And then I'll cook it in the chicken broth if I want a little bit lighter of a flavor. But they both add a sense of heaviness, another texture. They add that little bit of nuttiness. And the one from Orrington Farms, the vegetarian chicken base seasoning, that's the one that's come closest to actually resembling the flavor of chicken to me. So I like that a lot. And that's just a really easy tip. Like anytime you cook anything, rice, faro, or quinoa, it's just another great way to add like that extra layer of flavor that can change a whole dish.
Yeah. And I've switched entirely. Well, I make my own chicken stock now, so I always have that in the freezer. But I've switched entirely away from cans and boxes of stock pretty much to either my homemade stuff or the dollop, because it's so much cheaper to do a dollop than it is to open a can or a box. And then what if you don't use it up or whatever?
Yeah. And you've also been making your beef broth a lot too.
Yeah.
It seems.
And do a beef bone broth too. They have roasted garlic, Better Than Bouillon, which is really delicious in grains as well. I put that last time I made faro. It was really good. And they have a mushroom one.
Really? I haven't tried the mushroom one.
They have fish ones too.
Hey, Kate, where do you buy your beef bases from? Where'd you buy your most recent batch from?
Oh, God. I spent a fortune on these tiny jars on Amazon, and then I went to my local grocery store, and they had the exact same thing for like a quarter of the price.
That was a tough hit, I remember.
I sent him a picture, and I'm like, look, what was at harvest time? Yeah, it was nuts. I was so obsessed with these mushroom things that I got one for you. Garlic. I got one for you, one for my mom, finally one for me, and they were like $6 or $7, and they were like $2.50 down the road.
Totally, and you had them shipped. It was awesome.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So check your local stores first. And here's another weird thing about Better Than Bouillon is I love their chicken one. Their organic chicken one, which you would think would be better, is not as good as their regular chicken one.
Really?
For the real chicken. Yeah, I know.
Interesting.
So I always keep the chicken one, the vegetable one, and the mushroom one, garlic one now in my fridge.
Nice.
And usually I'll use a combo of my homemade stock and that. And chicken and beef go well together, by the way. You might try a combo.
Oh, really?
Of chicken and beef. Yeah, it's not unusual if you're making a beef dish to use chicken stock because they balance each other nicely.
Okay, nice. Good tip. The other thing I've been in love with, God, and it's so funny because, you always hear, where was I just listening to this? Valerie Bertinelli was being interviewed on Beyond the Plate, and she just talked about how Ina Garten reminds her how the simplest things are always the best. And this brings me to charred vegetables. I've just been
dying to talk about, but I just have to say, since you just said that, I had such a strong emotional response that I have to just say this right now. You and I both just watched, and we're probably going to do a whole show on this, that Netflix series, Salt, Acid, Fat, Heat. Salt,
fat, acid, heat.
Thank you. Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which is based on a cookbook and is this 4-part Netflix series that we will be talking about in more depth. And as I was watching the care and respect that these people are putting into all of this food, I'm like, why? And then I had just heard that Valerie Bertinelli thing where she talked about that reminder of Ina Garten that all you need is fresh, simple food that's beautifully prepared. I'm like, why is that not the only thing we ever eat? It's so weird how we eat when you look at how a lot of the other parts of the world eat. And yeah. So anyway, simple things.
It really speaks to how overcomplicated things are. And I think this is what this whole conversation is born out of. Sort of the simple things we've been doing that we just really love and really resonate with us.
Mm-hmm. So what are you charring
Listen, I'll do anything at this point. I have some friends that gave me a large cast iron skillet. I went to visit my friend when she was in New York with her English mom.
Really? You should let me meet them. We'd probably get along.
I heard she likes scones. So they had this large cast iron skillet. It wasn't quite working out for your mom, right?
I had bought it for my mom, and it was just too heavy for her to handle. Plus, she burned her hand on it once really badly, and then it just spooked her after that. Plus, she's older and not as strong as she used to be, so when it's full, it's heavy. And so she just couldn't work with it. She didn't want to.
Totally. So in walks Rick.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Do you want this?" And I'm like, "Yes."
I would have taken it, but I was in New York and I couldn't get it home. Yeah.
Totally. And do you remember about that moment? The cast iron pot was in a bag, and you're like, "Here," and you put the cast iron. Do you want this pot? And I'm like, "Yes." And then you put the cast iron pot back in this bag, and you set it down. I'm like, great. And then when I go to leave, I take the cast iron pot out of that bag and I put it in my actual bag I came with. And then you guys just sort of bursted in laughter because part of the whole ruse was you wanted to get rid of that bag that the pot was in. And you were so...
We're like, Rick will take it. We'll make Rick take it with the pan.
And I turned to leave and they were just laughing like, oh God, I guess that didn't work because I left the bag behind.
Because nobody wanted the bag. Yeah.
But that's a digression. I come to the fact that now this cast iron pan I use a lot. And I will simply throw in broccoli. I love the carrots and the red pepper. I've done leeks. I really throw in whatever I have. And you know what I love about these charred vegetables? Is a lot of times, particularly if I do the quinoa that I just talked about that's cooked in a beef base, put these charred vegetables, sometimes with a little salt and pepper, that is, and maybe a squirt of lemon or even a squirt of lime, that is enough. Because it's got enough flavor it is that I don't need to add a lot of extra things, and particularly a lot of extra calories that might go into a sauce.
Yes, and you've got a lot of umami things going on there with the char and the beef and that. So, a couple drops of soy sauce, not made into a stir fry, but just a little tiny drizzle would probably be amazing on that because that also has that umami or Worcester sauce. Oh my gosh, I'm salivating. That sounds amazing.
I've thrown garlic in. Yeah, I usually basically throw in whatever I have left, but the broccoli and the red pepper. Oh, I did artichoke hearts. That's what I was telling you about.
That's right.
I pulled the artichoke hearts that were out just from a can that were already soaked. So I just took them out and I let them dry out a little bit because I didn't want that much liquid in the pan.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, those, because I like artichoke hearts. I particularly like raw ones. When the whole artichoke, not raw ones, but when the whole artichoke comes, I love dismantling an artichoke that way, which I don't get to do very often. But the way it makes these hearts out of a jar transform, it's well worth like the 5-10 minutes that it's going to take to char them and throw them on your salad or you're on even on a plate with a little squirt of lemon, and it's all awesome.
I've been doing charred broccoli in there with the pan dry. Because normally I put oil when I saute vegetables, and you've been using a bit of oil, right? Or
no, because I put them in the first time without oil, and then halfway through I'm like, oh, I forgot oil. I'm like, oh, it's still working.
Because I guess there's enough oil theoretically in a cast iron that kind of lives there. I think that's why you can do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the dry char on broccoli is really, really great. Brussels sprouts is really good in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some broccoli in the freezer. I had all these vegetables and they were going to go bad. And one of the things I loathe more than anything is waste and throwing stuff away. So I make a real effort not to do that. So I had all this broccoli, green beans, and cauliflower that I thought I was going to eat last week, and I just didn't. So I was going to roast them and then freeze them. And then I did a little research, and people on the internet said that doesn't work out, that the texture's gross when you take them out, and if you roast them before you put them in. So I didn't.
Okay.
So I followed whatever advice I found online, and I ended up just...
From them?
Putting yes, exactly, the people who know the things. I just cut the broccoli into florets and froze it raw. Supposedly that's what you do, and probably I will char it when it comes out or roast it.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's great. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah, totally.
It'll probably be a little mushy because I didn't blanch them, but a lot of people said you don't need to blanch them, so I didn't. So I think if I were to eat them raw, it might not be great, but I think once it's cooked, it won't matter. And then the cauliflower I riced and froze it riced, and I took out so much liquid, and I will have to do that once again. And my apartment smelled of cauliflower for 2 days because of all the cauliflower funk in these dish towels. It was terrible.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is the dish towels is what you wring everything out in, all the rice out in?
I have these really good absorbent dish towels, and I actually wrapped the cauliflower rice in these dish towels in 4 layers of dish towels, put it on the floor, and stomped on it the way you would to dry out a shirt that you were hand washing or laundry that you were washing, to get as much moisture as possible out. So I think I really got a lot out, but it will come back in the freezer because that's what happens in freezers.
Are these towels designated specifically for cauliflower rice?
Well, they weren't. But I'm afraid now they might have to be, because I don't know if the smell will ever come out. And then when I did laundry, I was pretty sure my whole laundry smelled vaguely of cauliflower.
No!
After that, yeah, it wasn't good.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah. And then I had these green beans, and I don't know why, but I didn't freeze them. I don't know if they said it wouldn't work or whatever, so I just roasted them and ate them, and they were delicious. It's my favorite way to do green beans.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
They're like candy. Just a little olive oil, salt, and pepper, roast them. I have a great toaster oven, so
So perfect, isn't it?
don't even have to turn
Sounds
on the whole
wonderful.
oven. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
All right, well, we are going to leave you hanging to know more information about what Rick and I are cooking until the next episode, because this was part 1 of a 2-parter. So we're going to come back next time with more of what we've been cooking lately. All right, we'll see you next time for part 2.